Hello, guys. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I need to see a blank screen at the moment, but just letting everybody jump in the video if they have any issues. Okay. Huh. You might have already read the title, and if not, you might be confused as to why there is a calendar on your screen. So I first want you to think about what this calendar gives you. What type of vibes? Do you think about the seasons? I personally love the seasons. Do you think about the birds? Do you even think about pucks with Tony Phil? Don't ask how stupid that sounds. Some people literally think about pucks with Tony Phil anytime they see a calendar. Don't look at me. Don't shoot the messenger, okay? But, I'm asking, what does this have to do with football or sport? Well, when you think of a football calendar, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Where do you begin? Let's start at the beginning. So, in the beginning of time, we had the Big Bang, which shattered a litany of eons. Okay, I understand. You meant the actual beginning. Let's try this again. In the beginning of time, we're going to go back to the dinosaurs. And when a dinosaur particularly fell across a piece of rock shaped in a circular object. Let's actually get started. Let's do this properly. The actual beginning of the sport. So we're going back to the beginning of the sport, and the sport was first codified as the game of football in 1863. There is a reason I picked this specific date. It is the date all the laws were codified. And to get us started, within 8 years. Wait, what's that guy? Oh, I have an idea. Before I actually get started, take a look at this map for me, please. We're going to need it later. Just remember this map, because we're going to flash back to this map a few times. Anyway, the first competition we're going to talk about was created in 1871, just 8 years after the codification of football in England. The name of the competition is the FA Cup. Now, this competition was won by Wanderers Football Club, a club that didn't even make it to the first tier of a professional football league in England. Anyway, that's nice to know. And that kit also stinks. By the way, I'm not a big fan of that kit, but if that's just what they say they wore in the 1870s and 80s, then so be it. I ain't challenging their opinion, but I'd imagine anybody trying to print that kit would probably puke before they could even get across to the printing press. So if all the companies puking before they even make it to the printing press, let's not be surprised that nobody is able to afford an actual manufacturer to create them god-awful kits. Anyway, you look at this calendar for the FA Cup. These were the dates at which the fixtures were scheduled. You see a day in November, a day in December, a day in February, and the final was held in March. The reason I hinted at these early dates was the FA Cup was the first major competition to be respected by English football clubs. And the reason why I hint at this competition so much is because this is when you started seeing players being prioritized for the FA Cup. A lot of early English teams also used the FA Cup as a huge opportunity in order to potentially make any potential money for themselves to outfund their team. And with the final being hosted so early in March and being so sporadic, it still allowed these clubs to play their own regional football matches. However, we now flip over to the creation of the Football League. In front of you is a team that was very dominant at the early inception of the Football League. The name of the club, and as you can see on the screen, is Preston North End. This football league, now called the First Division, was created back in 1888. Preston North End lost 0 games. Preston North End lost 0 games. Pretty incredible to go undefeated over an entire course of a calendar campaign. Preston North End also won the FA Cup that year. So, feasibly, this is as close as replicably possible Preston North End's entire fixture list, playing from September into the end of March. Nothing too crazy. They played just a typical 15 league games. Well, 15 league games, just a few FA Cup games at the time. Just still very composed, not too heavy a fixture list. But these are the first games which bring prestige among these random scattered group of English football clubs. But now we're going to progress a little bit to the presidency of this guy, Jules Rimet, president of FIFA at the time, and spanning over the space of the 32 years to which he turned into office, this sport had spawned from a bunch of regional leagues in England to a multifaceted worldwide sport. And whilst previous editions, like the Sir Thomas Lipton Trophy, listen, I don't know what that trophy is either, don't look at me. And we also had the Copa America, which was created in 1916, which was a regional tournament for South American clubs, South American teams. We had the creation of the World Cup, and Uruguay was the first winners of the tournaments, who won the competition in 1930, defeating Argentina 4-2 in the final. Now, next person we're going to head to is Gabriel Hano. And he, alongside creating the Ballon d'Or, also created the Champions League. And these were the original 16 teams. And of this 16 teams, Real Madrid ended up winning the trophy, as they went on to win 5 Champions Leagues in a row. A historic precedent that has never been replicated by a single club since in the competition. Okay. Very normal. And finally, we have the EFL Cup, otherwise known as the Worthington Trophy, the Capital One Cup, the Carabao Cup, the Energy Drinks Cup, my cereal box on top of my fridge has more worth than the Trophy Cup, but it was incepted in 1960. And Aston Villa, were the very first winners of the competition. So let's revert back to our map here, which we last referenced when Preston won the league title. Let's take a look at how problematic this map could get. Yeah. Every single date that is circled would represent a hypothetical fixture that would have been played at the time. As you can see, this is already a pretty loaded map. This fixture list is crazy. Teams are oftentimes playing now every single week, sometimes 2 times per week, sometimes more, with a few breaks in between. And this is just representing club fixtures. This is forgetting international friendlies or international competition they would have played at the time. I haven't even acknowledged the creation of the Euros, which was the same exact year in 1960. Albeit it wasn't at a truly expanded level until 1972. It doesn't really matter because the fixture list is already extremely stacked at this stage. But that's just beside the point. So, I want you to think for a second exactly what the problem could be. Injuries. First off, injuries. Players are going to get injured. The more games they play, the more injured they're going to get. You've gone from a fixture list where players are playing high intensity games 6 times across a football season to a situation where players are playing high pressure games nearly 40 to 50 times per season. In the previous map I showed, that averaged up to roughly 50 games. That's the average length of a team that goes far in the FA Cup, the League Cup, the English League, and any European competition. Not to mention that alongside going far in all 4 competitions means that they're playing these many games, they're still having to play their international matches as well. So it can cause injuries. And in recent times, those injuries are starting to become prevalent to some of our best players. Take a look at the map again. Just look at how many games a team is playing. And by the way, I've not incorporated the August fixtures. We're still looking at that from 1960 here. Look at the amount of games. And I've not incorporated the August fixtures. Probably September to May, the bulk of the football season. That's how the map looks. By the way, I sectioned the map to look like this because the season typically starts in July and ends in June. That's how the map looks. And yes, I know it's a modern map, sue me. I'm just trying to make the point of a calendar shouldn't look this stacked when it comes to circles. It's fine, but it can create potential problems. You got a player like Pedri, a player who I've felt a lot of sympathy for in terms of injury situation. The guy's injury list is looking like a big book at this stage. The dude's had several injuries, which has spanned over the course of nearly an entire year. He spent times at portions being 2, sometimes even 3 months out at a time. These injuries have had a huge effect on one of the most talented players on the planet. And it's extremely sad to see a player who's extremely young constantly not be able to stay fit. But that shouldn't surprise you can't stay fit. Remembering that the Olympics also has a football tournament, which I'm not going to delve into why that sounds stupid, but you end up having players like Pedri playing 70 games a year. That's how many games he played on account from 2020 to 2021, being one of Barcelona's main men, one of Spain's main men at the Euros, and at the Olympics. Not sustainable. Okay. With other players like De Bruyne, Dembele, and historically Marco Reus also having suffered from injury, either due to their bodies physically breaking down or a heavy fixture list constantly leading to them getting injured. But that's not the only problem with the situation. Let's think about what other problems there could be. So, back on the slide, and I showed you Preston were league champions. There was this badge at the bottom right corner of the screen. In this badge, we see just the original 12 football league clubs. Wolves, Aston Villa, Stoke City FC, Everton, Notts County, Derby County Football Club, West Bromwich Albion, Preston North End, Burnley Football Club, Bolton Wanderers, Accrington FC, and Blackburn Rovers. Okay, so clubs. The original 12 Football League clubs. How many of those clubs do you think are still in the top flight? Just these 3. Just these 3 clubs are still in the top flight. Wolves, Aston Villa, and Everton. These 3 clubs are the only clubs still in the top flight. Okay, that's not great. About Notts County. When were they last in the top flight of English football? We got time. Nope. 1991-92. Okay. That's not great, but it happens. Some clubs are unable to get promoted for a long time. That's completely understandable. Let's try Preston North End. You know, the OG Invincibles. the first team ever in English First Division history / Premier League history to go undefeated. The best Invincibles. When were they last in the Premier League? Got some time. I'll wait. Still waiting. Okay, time's up. 1961-62. Or it could be 1960-61. Could be getting my dates wrong. Anyway, another point we're going to hang on with the final club and the final part of the discussion. Accrington FC. Okay. Accrington FC. Let's talk about them. That's not Accrington Stanley, by the way. That's Accrington FC. That's by the fact the badge isn't a representation of Accrington Stanley, but Accrington FC. Okay, cool. Okay. What were they last in the division? Got some time. Time's up. None of you got this right, by the way. I know none of you got this right unless you researched it, paused the video. It's fine. If you did, kudos to you. If you didn't and you tried to guess this, you were most certainly wrong, because it is 1896. They were a club for 18 years. 18 years. In fact, the town of Accrington eventually had to create another football club. And this typically happens in English football. To create another football club who eventually replaced this team, and that became Accrington Stanley. You can see the problem. And here we got a bigger problem. Oftentimes clubs fold due to reasons of finance, or lack of finances, or problems at the boardroom level. Back in the day, just simply finding a kit. These kits are also atrocious, by the way, but we're not going to get into that. These kits are also atrocious, but we're not going to get into that. So, if clubs are constantly folding, you just end up with this situation. The biggest clubs who are able to stay successful and stay stable during the early period eventually grow in dominance. And eventually, they start to take over leagues. In England, for example, and England's been a big example throughout this because they're the very first team to create a football league, and it's just the easiest league to map out because every other league has the same structure, or had the same structure. Most leagues had a second cup alongside a first cup, alongside the league, alongside the European competitions. In fact, it was the eradication of several of the lower tier cups that led to the dissolution of the European Cup Winners' Cup, because the Cup Winners' Cup was a trophy specifically designed for cup winning teams. Okay, so it's not great, is it? And that's further eradicating any of the teams who would have had a chance to compete in major European competition. So you end up trending towards teams like this, teams who are either wealthy enough to compete, or teams who are simply historically successful. There are two teams on this map who have never been historically successful but been bankrolled. The other four teams on this map have been historically successful either in Europe, in England, or just here for no reason, but we'll get into them a lot later, at a different time. And oftentimes, we see this parity in Europe, because this is what we create. A situation by which there's often a dichotomy of the top European clubs being able to compete, and realistically, not many of the middling English clubs or European clubs able to stay competitive with the biggest giants in each league. We see this in the top 5 leagues, and we also see this in the Deloitte Football Money League. Why? Because of money. That's just how clubs want to make money at the end of the day. Can't really fault them for it. If you have the money and you're able to spend it, you're naturally going to be more successful than others. In the Deloitte Football Money League, as of this year, Madrid were the first club to exceed €1 billion in revenue. Actually, the math project on exactly how they're able to exceed this level of income and growth year upon year. And with the other clubs, there are also other clubs closing in on over £1 billion worth of revenue. Manchester City, Paris Saint-Germain, two critical examples. They both had over €800 million of revenue. And you can also see the dichotomy and the problem that you have here. Let's take a look at every English club. And there was only one club, just one club, within the original 12 teams who is on this list. We are talking 137 years. And there's only one of the 12 clubs who are still here. Let's remember that there were no teams within the south of England who were in the National Football League in 1888. But 137 years later, there are 3 clubs in the south, 4 clubs in the south, and 5 clubs in the north. Okay. The only club? Aston Villa. 18th under the Deloitte Football Money League, with revenue last year of €210.2 million. Just the great basis of stability, isn't it? No Burnley, no Preston North End, the first ever undefeated team in English football history. In the top flight anyway. Look at the success of all the teams on this list. There is only 3 clubs of the 9 English clubs on this list who have not experienced Champions League success. Every club of English descent on this list has won a European trophy. In fact, every club, bar a couple, have won a European trophy. It's not great, is it? And let's not start about the Champions League. 4 pots, 36 teams, 8 games. This dumbass bracket. Who asked for this? Who asked for this, Sephrin? Who asked? I don't think I did. So I don't think anybody else did. No one asked for this, but we were all too kind to dismiss the Super League, but nobody asked for this, by the way. Nobody asked for this. I mean, come on. You have each player coming out like they've just come from the Korean War. Like, what's going on, bro? Some of these players have suffered more injuries than people who go to war. I mean, cripes, man. I mean, come on. If we send some of these guys to the Ukraine front lines, they'd probably be less better than some of these footballers currently playing right now. Come on. And as for the presidency of FIFA, well, previous president was acknowledged for fraud when it came to dealing out the World Cup for 2022. So, got rid of Sepp Blatter, we hired Gianni Infantino, and he's doing even flipping worse. Forget just awarding the World Cup to Saudi Arabia, because we're not going to go there. 48-team World Cup in the first place? This ain't the Olympics, brother. What are we gonna do with Myanmar? What the hell are we gonna do with Belize? They have not slipped a minute of World Cup action as far as I'm concerned. Who's gonna be playing on the left wing? A buddy doctor? Is the fish gonna go up front? To be fair, that would be a pretty good usage of fluidity, but still! Subscribe. And Peace out.